All right, we now want to turn to some of the educational implications for behaviorism as a theory of psychology. And one of the important implications is that the behaviorists will say, in accordance with their systematically, one might even say ruthless scientific approach to the science of psychology, that educators should see themselves as ruthlessly applied scientists rather. That if we understand the human being as a conditioned stimulus response machine, then education is a matter of programming or conditioning the right kinds of behavioral responses in students. Students come in as unconditioned or lightly conditioned. Obviously, they've had a few years of conditioning at home. Our jobs then is to build on that conditioning or necessary to recondition in some particular respects to get the desired behavioral outputs that we want by the end of the educational process. And so as a start, what I want to do is establish a grid here of behavioral techniques that behavioral psychologists, as applied to education, will urge upon teachers to make as part of their professional training and as part of their ongoing professional development to elaborate kinds of techniques that behavioral science can provide to them to apply to educational practice. Now, if we are thinking about the kinds of stimuli that we as teachers are in charge of, we're going to bring students into a classroom. The classroom will have all kinds of stimuli that the students then will be exposed to. We as the teachers will be stimulating and providing all sorts of stimuli to the students. We will say certain things to them. We will engage them behaviorally. They will be observing how we ourselves are behaving, and that will be a kind of stimulus. We'll provide all sorts of educational materials and so forth to them. All of those stimuli, we as scientifically minded educators should think through systematically and scientifically and use those ones that we know and have tested such that they will achieve the desired results, whatever those results we have decided they're going to be. Now, as a way of elaborating the kinds of stimuli that are possible here, there are a few different ways of setting up a taxonomical chart here, but I'm going to give you one simplified chart in this particular case here. What we can do by way of stimuli is give, right, a certain kind of stimuli, or we can take, right, a certain kind of stimuli. So it can be, for example, that I will, if a student does a certain kind of thing, say something to the student. I might, if the student does something that I think is an appropriate behavior, I might give the student praise, right? The other thing that I might do, by contrast, is take away, right, something. There might be a stimulus that is present, and I can then remove that stimulus, right, from the environment. So, for example, it might be the case that recess is a normal part of the student's day, but if the student's behavior has not been the kind of behavior that we judge to be appropriate, then I might take away recess, right? So I can give a stimulus, right, or I can take away a stimulus. We can take the stimuli and also array them in terms of positive stimulus, right, or a negative stimulus. So, for example, a student might do a behavior that I think is an appropriate behavior, and then the stimulus, the reinforcing stimulus that I might give is to say, give the student a gold star on the work that he or she has done. Right? Or it might be the case that the student has engaged in a behavior that I think is an inappropriate behavior, and so the stimulus that I give to that student is a negative. I might frown at the student, right? Or in extreme cases, I might slap the student and so forth. That would be giving something that is a negative. All right, now with this kind of two-dimensional array here, what we can do is, as educators, think about possible kinds of stimuli or the removal of stimuli that would fit in each category here. So, to give a positive, for example, an example might be praise. I might say, good job. I might, on the student's work, give them a gold star. Right? Or if the student does good work, I might give them a grade that is a positive grade, like an A or a B. By contrast, we might then give negatives. Here, A frown might be an example here. More strongly, it might be to give the student some blame, right, where verbally I say something that is negative, bad work, or you shouldn't have done that, right, and so forth. Or I might also give a negative. I might give a failing grade. I might give the student, right, an F on a report or a project. And then the same holds if we turn over to the take side of the equation here. I did give the example earlier of taking away a positive. If the student, for example, is engaged in what I judge to be inappropriate behaviors, then I might take away recess, right? And so as a punishment, so to speak, the student has to stay inside, for example. Another example might be, suppose we have a younger students, and every time they go for recess, they line up. One student gets to be the line leader, and so today so-and-so's day to be the line leader, but so-and-so was misbehaving today, and so I've taken away the person's privilege of being the line leader, and I give that to someone else. So the privilege might be taken away. Another example is, I think, a modern example. It could probably be in a couple of places here, but the phenomenon of a timeout, right? So you have a student who is misbehaving or not staying on task, and what you do is you make the student go away from the educational environment and sit quietly by himself and hopefully contemplate things. And the idea here is, at least the theory behind timeout, is that if the student really thinks about it, he knows that he wants to be learning stuff and he wants to be in classroom for various sorts of reasons. And the timeout then gives him time to reflect on the situation, get his behaviors under control, and then recommit to joining the class and behaving appropriately. So by putting the person in timeout, what you're doing is you are taking away a positive. You could, of course, also characterize this one as giving the student a negative, because if you put the student in timeout, then typically what happens is the student gets bored, and the boredom is a negative. It's a painful state or a psychologically uncomfortable state, and hopefully that then spurs the person's renewed commitment to the appropriate kinds of behaviors.